whenever you're ready.
Sure. My name is Megan Kaye, and I teach 5th grade at PS 86, which is in the Bronx, District 10. I filmed a math lesson today with my class, who I have all day long. They're mostly comprised of English language learners, so varying abilities and various times in the country. Some just new within this last year, others who have been here 3 or 4 years already.
Good. How does this lesson connect to and build on students' prior skills and knowledge? What was taught before the lesson and what will come after?
This lesson was based on data and measurement that we've been looking at for the past month, on and off. We've learned different ways that good mathematicians collect data and then can display it in different types of graphs. We discuss what graph is best for describing certain kinds of data. And so we've been zooming in lately to a very common 5th grade graph, which is the line plot. And in conjunction with the coordinate plane, we've learned how to plot points on the coordinate plane. So today was kind of a lesson that brought all of those things together and taught students to analyze sequences and relationships and describe the relationship between two sequences and patterns, which is sometimes difficult to understand how they connect, and verbalize how they connect, which is what you'll see in my lesson. That's something that I emphasized. So they learned today to plot points on the coordinate plane and connect it to show a constant rate of growth or constant relationship between two different number sequences and patterns.
Is the text used in this lesson part of a sequence of text designed to build skills and knowledge?
Yes, the text we use is called Go Math, and it is a Common Core aligned curriculum text that tries to build on former knowledge and scaffold to more difficult knowledge. The lesson that you saw today was a lesson towards the end of the data and measurement chapter. So it's building on lots of different skills that they had learned in isolation previously.
Talk about the standards targeted in the lesson. What did you do to make the lesson reflect the full intent of that standard?
Sure. So the standard was to analyze and graph data and determine the relationship between two number sequences. So my goal today was not only for them to understand what those two number sequences look like in isolation, and that's what we've been working on for the past couple days, but also then today how to connect those two number sequences to recognize, for example, that the months that have a pattern also are connected with the amount of money, for example, that somebody might spend at the gym or use per month. So to understand that connection and be able to verbalize it.
Which of the core action indicators do you think this lesson best exemplifies?
I think that it is, math core curriculum standards are very laid out. There's a whole strand based around measurement and data, and it's very clear that they want students to not only be able to collect data, but then to be able to use it and display it in different ways, and to understand when they see a data table or graph that's already created for them, but also for them to be able to create their own and provide generalizations about that, make their own understandings, as well as be able to create their own. Oops.
Did you need to grab that?
I mean, I can just let it ring or it probably will ring for a while.
Will it?
Is that
Go
okay?
for it. Yeah. Let's see, where were we at? Okay. So discuss how this lesson illustrates the shifts required by the CCSS.
So I think that this lesson was a great example of how much more demanding the Common Core Learning Standards have become. I think previously, and I've been a teacher for many years now, the lesson would have just been based around them putting dots on a grid and maybe making a line, and they might not have really thoroughly understood what they're doing. And I feel like the way that these learning standards have challenged me as a teacher has therefore translated into how much more the students are challenged, and really pushed them not only to just be going through rote steps or memorization, but to have them really understand what they're doing. And it's not all of a sudden in one lesson anymore that they just get it. it takes a long time to build upon those understandings, as you saw today in the lesson, and we'll continue to work on that solid understanding that doesn't just have them going through the motions, but really has them understanding what it is that they're doing and why.
How did you support all students in working with grade level text? For example, how do you provide scaffolding for students below grade level so they can read grade level text?
So a lot of the work that I do within my class, sorry.
All right, let's take it from the top.
Yeah,
Sorry.
sure. A lot of the work that I do with my class is in partners, and those partnerships and their positions within the classroom are based upon ESL skill level, based upon their math skill level as well. They often move around the classroom to work in different groups for reading, math, writing, depending on their skill level, so that they have support not only with me, but within other students that can help support their learning styles. A lot of the times, for example, in this lesson, we talked a lot about recipes in past days. We heavily looked at vocabulary that are revolved around this and that kept repeating, such as batches. I feel like without that vocabulary support, a lot of my ESL students would not be able to access just the basic meaning of these tables or the words, so obviously then it becomes much harder for them to understand the math behind it. But that's
after school, snacks are being given out in 307A today for all grades.
but that's a constant
307A for all grades.
But that's a constant struggle for my students to be able to read on grade level, and we constantly work in all areas of their curriculum to help them access the text in a better way.
How do you know the students were able to successfully respond to the text-dependent questions and tasks with precision?
So not only was I going around checking, there were other student helpers who went around checking. That last sheet that I gave out to the students to work on in partners is something that we'll continue to work on tomorrow. It's a really much more difficult one where they were analyzing two separate relationships between two different patterns, and they will eventually see that will make two line graphs. So at the end of the day tomorrow, after they're finished working in groups, the students will grade themselves on a rubric that we are very familiar with, as well as I will grade them on a rubric to see how they accomplished what they needed to do. So spot checking as they went around, as well as at the end collecting something, and then eventually it will be shown on a test.
Which behaviors from Core Action 3 did the students best exemplify in this
Sorry?
lesson? Which actions from Core Action 3 did the students best exemplify in this lesson?
I don't know what that means.
Okay.
Action 3.
We'll move on.
Yeah.
Reflecting on the lesson, what worked particularly well and what might you do differently?
So it's constantly a learning process, especially as these Common Core lessons are enrolled for the first time this year, to understand what exactly works, what clicks, and what I could do better for next time. Especially within this lesson, I feel like what I wanted to really emphasize was something that they didn't get out of yesterday's lesson, which was the vocabulary, the academic vocabulary behind how the two patterns and sequences were connected. And that was something I emphasized. I do think that it took a little bit longer in the beginning of the lesson than I would have anticipated. So therefore, maybe I could have created its own lesson out of that, or gone back and retaught yesterday's lesson as opposed to steaming forward. I would have hoped to get a little bit more time looking at more complicated relationships as they started to work with at the end of the day. But there were a lot of good things that went on in the lesson too. I think they became more familiar with what they were looking at, and even students who were struggling were able to verbalize a little bit better what was going on with the data that they were looking at.
Last question is,
Sure.
were there any surprises or unexpected student behaviors or reactions?
I feel like it's the end of the day and it's spring, so of course kids are a little bit less motivated after the test. I have a pretty well-behaved class. They struggle very much with reading, writing, and math, and are coming in with lower scores. So I've seen a lot of improvement this year. However, it's still a struggle to make sure they're on task, and as there are 30 of them and one of me, sometimes making sure that everybody gets all their questions and troubles answered is something that I struggle with. So that's just one thing that I'll continue to tweak, and hopefully as I continue in my teaching career, we'll get better at making sure that everybody's issues are addressed and that I'm able to use the students in the class who do understand to help me even more.
We're done.
Okay. Thank you
Oh,
for
wait,
being
this
flexible
isn't
today.
No, thank you for being flexible
course.
today.